I just want to acknowledge that the Minerva team is hosting this event from the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, represented today by the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Today, we're here to talk about gender equality and the future of work, and I'm so delighted to have our panelists with us here today. Our event sponsor is PwC, long-standing partners of Minerva and always on side when we try to come up with creative ideas and sort of what are topics of conversation that we can bring to our community. And it was really conversation with their team that brought this topic to light. We were thinking about future of work. We were thinking about all the changes around COVID. We were reflecting that even before COVID, many changes were in the mix in terms of technology adoption and digitization that was changing the world of work anyway. And so what we wanted to do was put on a conversation about the future of work, the trends we're seeing, what's happening in the space, and sort of what expectations of people are for work and how we're going forward, but especially how that's impacting women. And so we are trying to have this conversation, recognizing that all people are affected, but also trying to shed a light on where women in the workplace are also impacted by these changes. So the speakers we brought in represent some growing industries, some high impact industry, high wage, high productivity sectors. So Marilyn Wang is joining us from PwC. She's a partner who works with clients to support them in their journey to digitization and adopting AI and modernizing their workforces. We've got Kirsten Sutton, who is the Chief Technology and Information Officer at Vancity, who has a long-standing career in tech, but even before then, a very diverse career in terms of how she found her pathways into tech, and is one of really Vancouver's leading people to talk about sort of the future and where we're moving to, and how do we create systems and structures that are good for people and employees and communities and businesses. So I'm delighted to have both of you here. We were to have a third panelist from TELUS. Unfortunately, she fell ill and was not able to join us today, but I know we'll get into a really juicy conversation with Marilyn and Kirsten. And for the Minerva team, we really didn't think we could have a conversation about future of work without having the future represented. So our moderator today is Rhea Morrow. She is a young leader who's been involved with Minerva through our Learning to Lead program. She's currently participating in our Youth Advisory Committee. She is a student studying business and administration and actually has an exam right following this webinar. So we're delighted that she made time to join us. She's going to lead the conversation and just sort of take us where she will about gender equality in the future of work. So I give the floor to you as our panelists. Thank you for being here, and thank you to all of our audience for joining us today.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Tina. I'm so excited to be here with Marilyn and Kirsten to learn from two such outstanding leaders. As I was reading more about the two of you, I felt even more honored to be here as your moderator and to have this conversation with the both of you. Of course, I'm going into the workforce soon, and this is a topic that's very prevalent to me. That's a big reason why I'm a part of the Youth Advisory Council, because we're able to have these discussions and sort of empower future youth. So the world of work has changed since COVID, as we all know, but arguably there were significant changes pre-pandemic as well. What's something the both of you feel optimistic or inspired about when you think about the future of work? Marilyn, can I hand it off to you to begin?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me here today. Been looking forward to this. So really happy to be here. So, you know, you're right. The world of work has definitely changed. And I think, you know, we have the opportunity now to reimagine and rethink how that could look like. And I think that's exciting. I think it's really a great opportunity to redefine and reimagine what that looks like. And so I'm pretty optimistic, you know, about where we can take this. The future of work, to me, I think of a few things. I think it's going to be flexible. I think it's going to be female. I think it's going to be more fulfilling, fair, and fun. And so we're going to touch upon each one of these. So there's a lot of F words there, all good F words. And yeah, so I mean, really what I'm excited about is the flexibility aspect. You know, you're right, pre-pandemic, we were all challenged by many, you know, the work-life balance conversations. I still remember having those conversations as, you know, I was going through my career and just really thinking about, you know, making choices, right? Can I actually have my career and have a family at the same time? Can I balance this? will I be able to, be flexible enough? And having those conversations with even my staff, like those are recent, those are not too long ago. And, the pandemic has really allowed us to, take a pause and reflect, and a moment just to, can we correct for this now that we've proven that we can work productively and effectively remotely and flexibly? And these were the challenges that the females that I was working with were all challenged with before the pandemic. So I'm excited that we can redefine this and we can course correct and find a world that can actually work for our females, because that's so important for us to grow and progress our female workforce up the ladder. We need more representation. And so I'm hopeful for that. I'm hopeful for this next generation who doesn't have to go through their career and think about, oh, do I have to make a choice between career and family? And I'm really, really hopeful for that. So yeah, so it will be more flexible and more female. So those are the two F words I'm going to cover right now, but more to come on this.
Flexible, female, and fun. Those are going to be my 3 favorite F words going forward. And I'm going to share them with the rest of our youth advisory council as well. I definitely see that with that pandemic. I saw a greater from at least my age category, a lot of more women joined the workforce, and myself included. I started working for a support office, which I learned is 80% women. And to see the starting of that and hopefully branch out into places like PwC would be absolutely amazing. And to see the future of work become more flexible, female, and fun is something that excites me. What about you, Kirsten? What inspires you or makes you feel optimistic about the future of work?
Well, I love the F word. So fun is my favorite F word of all time for anybody who knows me. But flexible is really the word du jour, right? Like that is what we're all looking for. And that is what is probably most important to women in the workplace. We have a lot going on and we always have, right? And whatever we can do to blend those lives in a way that works for all of it, to be our best selves, no matter where we have to be in any given moment, is really, really the goal here. I did want to say one thing that, the bad thing about the pandemic is a few things got worse, right? So, I mean, besides health outcomes, which are sadly, are going to be among us for a while, a lot of folks got left behind, right? Women were the first to have to leave their jobs during the pandemic to take care of things at home. They were disproportionately affected from a financial perspective because of the pandemic. And things like that. We've left people who were digitally less connected behind further because the pandemic has isolated people in the way it has. And so I say all that not to bring it down, but to show my optimism is that it brought a lot of things to light that perhaps we might have just continued to not really look at. And so I'm really optimistic that we can actually level the playing field even further. Not only will it be flexible and better for things we've been asking for years, but it might actually solve some systemic issues that have been around that nobody was looking at until the pandemic said, hey, look, we've got some bigger problems here than this. We just can't ignore anymore. So I'm really excited about that as well.
Definitely. I'm glad that you brought light to that. Bringing in, I definitely agree that the pandemic brought light to the gender inequality that existed as well in workforces. But because there's so much more light that's brought to this, and because of the social media revolution that we currently live in, I feel like it's definitely like a stepping stone towards making things right and beginning this cycle of fixing what's been a part of our system for so long. During the pandemic, we also noticed that many workplaces were able to adapt to alternative work structures, which kind of touches on that flexibility. I know I was working from home for a few months, which I couldn't have imagined. And BCA actually came out with a statement saying that the blueprint that they had for 2025, they had to bring forward into 2020, and they couldn't have imagined doing that. But we were all sort of forced to adapt to that. We are now in a transition period. So with many organizations experimenting with hybrid sort of models, and some calling employees back to the office, which is my situation. I've recently been pulled back in. What's working and what do you think it isn't working?
Yeah, I love talking about hybrid work. Anybody who might be here on the line for Vancity knows I've lived in a hybrid world for many years, working for a global multinational company before I came to Vancity. And a hybrid is actually really hard. I think that we were all isolated and we were all working remotely. That's very different than working in a hybrid model. And I think that that's probably the biggest aha for most people as we return. Some people return to the office for different reasons, right? Sometimes it's mandated, sometimes it's more productive, sometimes for your mental health, you want to be around people or just have a different, view out the window for a little while, right? But I think that people, once they get in the office and realize it's pretty easy that recency bias and proximity bias, all these biases start dropping into the world, which were not necessarily present when we were all, on a level playing field. So I think people are finding it difficult in some ways, but I think the flexibility that we have to add into hybrid is things like job carving and job sharing and things like that that are really specifically will help women in the workplace, right? If you have a way to be able to do, instead of having to do all these things at all these times when you're not available and assuming a job is always these 10 things in these 8 hours or 7.5 hours, think about how do I break this up into pieces that people can get really good at, that will work for their schedule, that will still meet our business objectives, right? That will still meet our members' expectations. And so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited that hybrid gives us an opportunity to access some folks that maybe we didn't have access to before. Right? There are people, and not just from a distance, but people who maybe couldn't make it into the office, whether it was a person with a disability, or perhaps it was not comfortable to be in an office environment. There are so many really amazing people out there that just were not comfortable in a full-on, in the room team environment. So for me, hybrid is hard, and making it work without, full-on telepresence and avatars that show up in the room, which we're never going to have probably in our work environments. It's going to be clunky, but it's making us get creative again on, okay, so what do we have to do this way? So I love that about it, but I really try to make sure everybody realizes this is not an easy street, being hybrid.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, right? Like it is hard, and it's a lot of discussions around this, right? How hybrid is hybrid, right? And how far do we want to take it? It's so true, especially in a professional services organization. We are such a people organization. In person has to be part of that equation somewhere, because we need that social interaction. We need the connectivity to our teams, our people. It is such an important part of our business to grow our teams, coaching, mentorship. There's just so much more effective when they're in person. So I do think the new equation will have, an element of those in-person moments and the virtual moments, and the team may need to define that on their own, right? Like it will be a team decision. We've tried a number of different models just to create those moments of that matter. I think are really important to drive people back into the office and have those connection moments. We've been missing that for the last 2 years. We're sorely missing that. And I see, our teams and coworkers generally very, very happy to see each other. And we were missing that. So, we've tried a couple of different models, like some worked, some didn't work. I think in the beginning, we were trying out things that were, fully flexible. Office was open, and, come in when you're comfortable. The health and safety measures were there. I think that was hit or miss. People would come in and, be either very lonely or in an office and back-to-back meetings still. And so that wasn't effective. So we're trying different models now. And I think what we're seeing is dedicated days, even dedicated floors, so that everybody can kind of bump into each other naturally on the floor seems to work. The dedicated days was interesting because, some days were very popular, like Tuesdays and Thursdays were very popular. We ran out of space really fast. So I think we're now just being more coordinated, more planful, even within teams, and to spread that out. But yeah, we need to reestablish that connectivity. But one thing I do really want to call out in this hybrid working world is, you do need that fun factor, right? There's my other F word here. the fun comes in because you do need to bring in that social aspect and give them a reason to come in. And that's really important.
A positive that, oh, sorry, Kirsten, you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, Marilyn, you just said something that I was thinking about as well. Like there has to be, there are things that really are better in person. And there are things that really can be done asynchronously, and it doesn't matter at all. And you can be super productive. I mean, I never want to go to another board meeting in person unless it's a strategy session, right?
Yeah.
Or perhaps, you know, a very deep discussion about, you know, a topic that is going to be really monumental for the organization. But regular business of reviewing financials and like, you know, I think this has been a revolution for boards, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited about that. But there are other things where, you know, the ideas just don't spark the same way unless you're sitting in the same room and you're talking over each other and you're having fun. So you have to find the reasons why this makes more sense. And then you have to meet people where they're at. I mean,
That's right.
I have vulnerable family members, so I am still a very paranoid, right? I don't go anywhere, and anybody who sees me, I've got my mask on. I'm in a room with 800 people with no mask. I'm still got a mask on. And that hopefully everybody's just got to be okay with where everybody is at with that. And we've been away long enough that you have to understand that it was an adjustment. People are like, I can't work from home. This isn't working for me. I can't concentrate. I can't do this. And now everybody's like, oh, this is the best thing ever. I never want to walk in the office again. Right. So we have to remember that the transition back, even if it's for one fun thing that they want to do, is not going to be easy for everybody. So we've got it's quite a social experiment, one that I don't think we would have chosen, but the best thing we can do is learn from it, right? We can right a few wrongs, we can learn a few things, and we can ultimately make things better for everybody if we do this right.
Kirsten, I couldn't
100%.
agree more. I read a study somewhere saying that we were wearing masks for so long and still are continuing to a lot of us who choose to, and we forgot how to read facial expressions of others. And so a social experiment is definitely the best way to describe this, because now you're going back into an office full of people and you're not sure how to interact. Reading body language has gotten more difficult, which was, I feel like, one of the key factors in work, right? Especially, let's say you're on a call with a client, you want to be able to read your coworkers' body language, maybe bounce off of them, but now we're sort of retraining ourselves. But there's a positive that I've noticed with hybrid work too. And as both Marilyn and Kirsten, you're both leaders in your organizations. So let me know if you agree with this. But it doesn't limit us to our employers in our geographical region anymore. We're able to have way more remote employees, which might increase the quality of employees that you also have, but it could also increase that balance in your own workforce, right? Because we are trying to balance out the gender equality in our workforce. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. We have access to more people. I've come from a world where I've always had that access though. So for me, the pivot isn't so stark as it might be for others. I've always worked with experts around the world, and we've amassed teams of people. I do want to say one thing though, and especially because one of the reasons I am at Vancity is that we are a community organization based and embedded into the communities where we live and serve. And so for me, I find it hard sometimes to want to go outside of our community, because there's still unemployment here. There's still so many talented people here that are underemployed or unemployed. And my bias is still, I want to really find, I want to make sure everybody here who wants to have a job, that has a passion and a desire, has the ability to do that before I start searching too far away. So it's my personal kind of bias, but also because at Vancity we're so community based. So yes, the opportunity is there, and sky's the limit, right? And think about this, not just for employers, but for your own health. It used to be that you would have to get on a plane and fly to the Mayo Clinic somewhere in, the US to get, some extra specialization from a doctor. Now, I mean, we can access pretty much anybody online and get a lot of that same kind of supports and healthcare online. So you think about it across the spectrum, not just in who you can hire and work with in your organization, but how you run your business or how you take care of your health as well.
Definitely. What are your thoughts on that, Marilyn?
Yeah, no, it really has, broken down some silos. I'd say that was our experience. Like we were working way more with teams across the country, or, usually it's a local team, try to do, local work with their local clients. We're now stretching beyond that, and we can now bring in the right resources to the right jobs, regardless of geography. So that's really exciting. And yeah, this virtual world has normalized and neutralized that, right? So we can do that now, which is great access to the right resources. So I think it's a very positive thing for sure.
In a recent global workforce study actually done by PwC, they found that 1 in 5 employees are likely to switch to a new employer in the next 12 months, which I've seen I've seen more stories like this throughout the pandemic of like job hopping or switching employers. In addition to compensation, purpose, and authenticity were found to be top motivators to leave work. This aligns with Minerva's experience delivering women's leadership programs. How does purpose and authenticity factor into your own career decisions?
Yeah, so I can get that going. No, thanks for that question. Purpose, really important. Finding that passion career. I'm a big fan of that. I do think once you find that, work is not work anymore. Work is fun and fulfilling, right? And I think that's finding that purpose and meaning really is important, and we need to find opportunities for our teams to find their purpose. And I'm happy and I'm lucky that I had that opportunity at PwC to solve for very important problems, right? And that's what gets us going, or gets me going. It's these transformational projects, trying to help make clients more productive, or just kind of move the community to a better place. I do a lot of work in retail with real estate clients, healthcare, government, even some nonprofits. And so, some of the common problems that, we're facing right now, we're helping them with, are really around, the demographic changes and the shifts that are happening, the population growth. How do you manage through that? How do you manage this increased, population that will drive new revenue, which is great, but how do you tap into that? And it stresses our infrastructure, and it stresses our healthcare systems. Like, how do you manage through that? What are the strategies? And we bring in that data analytics perspective, but these are complex problems, and I love these, and I can spend all day working through these, but that's what drives us, right? And that we want to do high impact projects and make impact in the world and contribute. But these are complex, and so it does require this pulling together of different teams of different solvers, right, in different capacities to help solve for these complex problems. And so this is what's new and different. We don't operate in our little siloed world. It is pulling teams together and try to solve for these problems. And this is what excites us, and the teams as well. And I think our jobs as leaders is to talk to our teams, find out what they're interested in, motivated by, because they will do the 14-hour days. Not that I want them to, but they will do them because they're passionate about it. And that's kind of where, what we're trying to do to connect the dots for them.
Definitely. Oh, sorry, were you gonna go? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I love everything you just said, Marilyn. Like, it all resonates with me. I would add, I have lots of thoughts on purpose, and I'll try to limit to a few of them. One, just to share, I was at SAP and a bunch of companies that were previously part of that lineage for over 25 years. And I left 2 years ago to join Vancity, and people are like, what, after all that time, why would you move? And I had told people the only reason I would ever leave SAP, because I was fully planning to retire from there. It's an amazing organization with endless opportunities if you grab them and run for them. And there was nothing wrong at all in my job. I was in my dream job, a job that suited me really well, and I had lots of purpose and passion around it. But I said I would leave only if I could find an organization that was hyper local, where I could really feel and see and touch and taste the difference that I make every single day, because that starts to feel difficult when you're at a really large organization, right? That is all around the world, and you're fighting for your place in that really large, global scale. And so that would be the only reason I would leave. And it was not to run away from SAP, but it was to run towards that opportunity to be hyper local. And so it is interesting when people say why they might want to leave, right? Is around purpose. So for me, it wasn't really purpose itself, because SAP was a very purpose-driven organization, as is, of course, Vancity. But it was in how that purpose was demonstrated and how I could touch it and be aligned with it so much more closely. Second thing I wanted to share is when you talk about purpose, and Marilyn, you were kind of going in this direction. Sometimes the role itself, sometimes there are jobs that just in and of themselves intrinsically are not all that inspiring, right? It could, like, there's lots of things that just the actual day-to-day work itself, 80% of it could be relatively mundane, yet you find purpose in being really good at it and doing it. But I think the other thing that you kind of talked about, Marilyn, is that there's other ways to bring purpose into an organization, right? Whether it's the different things that the organization supports, right? And so, I mean, Minerva was a big part of SAP's DNA in the past, and part of Vancity's DNA, right? Vancity was the first to support the funding partner for the scorecard. The leadership, face of leadership scorecard as an example, right? And so having outlets for your employees through your business that you support and allow them the time and to give their talent to these organizations is one way to, even if the day-to-day job is not the one that they get up in the morning going, woohoo, it's the organization that has purpose behind it that you're allowed to do is a second thing I just wanted to say. The last thing I wanted to say is people leave organizations, and yes, they talk about people leave managers, and I believe all that is true. And when you're running away, is for those reasons, right? But I also want to suggest, and I talk about this a lot, I don't think moving around jobs is so bad. I actually think it's what we ask of people these days. And sometimes within an organization, you can move around a lot because there's a lot of opportunities in one organization. But we're always telling people you need this experience, or try that out, or work over here for a while, or do this for a while, or hey, take this course or do that course, or change your path. And we suggest that. And people always see it as such a failure when somebody leaves their organization. And I couldn't disagree more with that premise, right? As long as while somebody is at your organization, that they are feeling fulfilled and heard and have the space to be their best selves, and therefore they are contributing really well, and you are gaining from that expertise and that time. If they leave in a year, and you can both say, wow, that was time well spent, then great. Definitely. Right? So I also think the days are gone of somebody staying somewhere for 25 years, I think. And we should embrace that and figure out how to really accelerate that in ways that work, right? It's difficult to have churn in your organization and be rehiring and revolving doors and stuff like that. But it's also not an abject failure unless people are running away. And perhaps then there's something you got to address. So those are all my thoughts around this. I have more.
Bang on. Yeah, no, I 100% agree, Kirsten. Like there is benefit, right, for multiple kinds of experiences that people bring, right? It hurts though when they leave. It hurts and it pains us, but it's potentially good for their growth for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. I think especially around people around my age group and those that are now entering the workforce and going into their careers, there's been a lot of discussion on staying in a job for long periods of time. And that's actually started to be discussed as an outdated thought. That's the word that we like to use. And for me personally, what I see is when my growth gets stunted in in a job, and if I feel as though I can't learn anymore, that would be my sign that maybe now it's time for me to move on, because these resources, these skills that I've acquired can be better used for someone else or with someone else. And I think that's what it's more about. I think in our generation, my generation, what we discuss a lot is it's not so about the loyalty to that company. We could love you and be loyal to you and have all this passion and purpose that we fulfilled within our role, but now that passion has to be transferred somewhere else so that we can continue to reach our fullest potential and provide the best that we possibly can. That's
the future of work. That is what you're saying, Rhea. You are speaking, and I know you can't speak on a full generation or your whole every demographic, around you. But the truth is like that is what we're actually asking people to do, but it's what people want to do, right? So how do we make that work, right? That if that's the future of work, how do we make that work? And I probably just trying to validate my childhood, because I'm jealous of all of you, to be honest. When I was your age, I moved around from job to job, and everybody looked at me like I was the worst human ever. I couldn't commit to anything. I obviously couldn't, do the job, or there was something wrong with me that I, would learn everything and then want to move on, right? Something must have been wrong with me. And so I love right now that you don't have to worry about that. I'm not thinking that about you. I am at all. And I don't know if I'm unique just because of my background, because I did that. But I think that is what what you just said. I wish you could, we do have this recorded, Tina. I think you need to publish that quote from Rhea. We can love you and be loyal to you and stay loyal to you. But once we've learned what we can and we feel like we want to transfer that passion to somewhere else, there's nothing wrong with that, right? So I love hearing that from you. And this is what we need to prepare for as businesses. We need to understand this is not a failure. It's actually the future of work.
And it begins with removing that stigma, right? That's been ingrained in us throughout generations. And I think that's our first step as leaders for everyone that's here listening, but also as youth, to not judge one another and not let those generational stigmas and sort of influences continue to play on. Sorry, Marilyn, I think I might have cut you off by mistake.
Oh, no, not at all. I also had this kind of bumpy career where I'm moving around. I get bored really quickly too. So yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is the wave of the future. I see more and more of that. So.
And my goal is to find fulfillment in my career, and from like the friends and coworkers and students that I see on my day-to-day life, they agree, right? And if you're able to find fulfillment, that's when you're able to perform the best as well. And I think that's definitely something that should be encouraged more. The same survey and study that was done by PwC also showed that women are less likely than men to feel satisfied with pay, which is a topic that comes up quite often when it comes to gender equality in the workforce. So women are shown in this survey to be less likely to ask for a raise or promotion and less likely to feel listened to by their managers. This may put some women at a greater risk for resignation. And for me personally, a topic that I've been having discussed a lot at school, because I am in business, is learning how to negotiate pay and negotiate those promotions. So using this scenario, what skills do you think that leaders need now that they might not have needed 5 or 10 years ago in order to manage people and teams more effectively in situations like this? Marilyn, could we start with you?
That's a tough one. Great. Yeah, I can go first. Kirsten. Yeah, so no, absolutely. I think as leaders, especially as female leaders and women leaders, we need to boost each other up, right? And we need to help us rise above this. And so we need more representation, to be honest, at the top, to be aware of these gender biases, right? And put those lens on. So I think the skills and the teams are becoming more and more diverse. So the leaders need to be also aware of how to manage these diverse teams, right? We are, after all, these are teams of people, and having that empathy level, a higher degree of emotional intelligence, perhaps, is going to be more and more important, so that the staff and teams feel that they're represented at the table, that somebody recognizes that there are some gender biases and lenses that need to be brought, as well as ethnicity lenses, right? I think each ethnic group has their own set of, unique biases that if we don't have a diverse, leadership group or people at the table who can represent, I think there may be some risk there that needs to be managed. So I think those are kind of what I think about when I think of leaders of today, any leaders of the future, what it needs to look like.
What are your thoughts on this, Kirsten, in terms of supporting
Madly
your...
making notes because you were
Yes.
saying some cool things around. So I think, and again, I'm reflecting back to when we first started the Face of Leadership scorecard at Minerva, that there's sort of two sides to this, right? There is lifting up women and giving them the toolkit and support system and strength and courage and all of that to be able to step forward and step up and ask for what they want and deserve, right? But then there is our leaders and our organizations ready to receive them, right? And know what to do with that. And so I love this question because it really gets to that side of it, right? Because we can do all of this over here and it could, the kidney can get rejected, right? In the end, right? And we don't want that. Right? So I love the question. And when I think about leadership, I think there's one job as a leader, one and only one. When it comes to managing people, I think you have a second one, which is to build the vision that it's inspiring for your team. But the second one on when it comes to people is just to know them, to understand them, to spend time with them, to have an open dialogue and an open channel with your employees so that you know when to push them, you know when to step back, you can tell when something's wrong, you can support them through whatever it might be, and you can have the best time you possibly can together in the time that you end up spending together, right? That's your one job. And so I think that's what leaders really need to work on, is making sure that space is there, right? It's available for people and you understand that. Because the truth is right now, employees are in the driver's seat. You can take off now. The resignation is happening. There's lots of places to go. You can now work remotely and still live in this beautiful place. And all of these things are true. And the only way you're going to retain an employee, and I hate that word, but is if you have a relationship where if they say, I'm not satisfied in this area, and that's why I'm looking over here, right? But if you can't have that conversation, then they're going to resign and you may never know why. And everybody will assume it was you. And it probably was, right? In the end, because people, when they run away, it is usually for that reason. So I think your one job is to really have that kind of relationship with those people that report to you directly and have a good pulse on the larger organization that you have so that you can be ready to help people and provide opportunities if you can. And I did want to comment on something that's going on in the chat, because David put in here about the pressure on organizations when it comes to recruiting and talent management and those kind of things. And I couldn't agree more. It is super difficult. And I wanted to share just a couple of thoughts on that. One is internships and intern programs. SAP did a really stellar job at this. Right, we had hundreds and hundreds of interns across the country, like almost 150 or more just here in Vancouver. It's a really great way to manage rotating talent, I guess, for another way to say that, right? To have people come in, it's great for a talent pipeline. The expectation is already set. It does have an end date, right? And so all of the work that you do to create a program like that can help you do this. And then you can parlay that into more full-time jobs later, even those practices on how do you quickly hire, how do you quickly bring people in, how do you easily exit and onboard them and exit them. The other thing I would mention is, I think an opportunity that never seems to stick, so I'm going to throw it out here again just to see if it sticks again, is more talent pooling within a region or an area or an industry or a vertical of some sort. Like we all still just, pass from job to job at place to place. And it's always this hard stop from one place to another. Should we be doing this another way? Is there some other really creative way to share talent and so people can get that opportunity to move around and take their passions and talents and apply them in different organizations? each organization is not going through this massive churn of hiring and onboarding and all this kind of stuff. And it's more equitable. Like the big organizations are throwing lots of money, and now coming from a big organization to one that, doesn't have the same ability to throw the same money at, you get kind of out of the game. It's hard to play to get this talent here, right? And that's why compensation always comes into it. So is there a way that we could share talent, where the compensation stays more, it's just easier for us to satisfy because one organization is not bearing the brunt of all of that. Anyway, I'm just wondering if there's another way. Anybody wants to chat about it and wants to start something, I'm here for you, because I think that might be an answer.
No, definitely. I think Sophie here said that when making co-op or internships, having them be more structured is a great first stepping stone towards that. We are nearing my last question with the both of you, as I do have to go off to my exam now. And I'm excited for this question. I think this one is what I want to know more about. And I've had the opportunity to learn so much from the both of you. So before I ask this, I do just want to say thank you for teaching me so much and for teaching, hopefully, a lot of our attendees so much too. And I know that they've been as excited as I am because this chat box has been blowing up since the beginning. But the same study with PwC showed that 39% of respondents are concerned that they are not getting enough training in digital and technology skills from their employer. And as a young person about to enter the workforce, I often hear about the potential for reverse mentoring, especially with digital skills. So what tangible skills do you value in younger employees, and how do you leverage them in your workplace? This is a tough one. Sorry.
No, this is a great question. I'm super curious about what Kirsten's answer is going to be, because I think we do both have some technical teams. So the team that I kind of lead is a technical team of AI specialists, like data scientists, that type, right? So I tend to lean towards the technical skills, right, as something that I'm gravitating to. But we also always need well-rounded individuals, right? So really strong communicators, people who are sensitive to understanding, the people aspects, right? So what we talked about earlier about empathy and the emotional intelligence, like all of that has to come into play when we look for the talent that we want to bring in. We're looking for professionals who want to grow and super curious and constant learning, because that's what we're signing up for here. It is never ending. So don't think you just graduated and it ends here. It keeps going. So we're looking for those, your lifelong learners and good translators of technical, and translate that into business and outcomes. So that's kind of what we're looking for from young people, where we leverage them in all sorts of different ways, like digital upskilling. They tend to be more digitally savvy and just digital natives. So from a design thinking, if we're looking to transform an older kind of process, or to modernize it in a digital world, we need the young folks to come in to open our eyes, inspire us. What could the world look like? So it's really fun to work with our young team.
Mm-hmm.
Kirsten, I'd love to hear your answer.
Well, you hit most of my points, Marilyn. I mean, that growth mindset is key, right? To come in with no real closed perceptions and expectations, and just be open to whatever might be, because the truth is you're more flexible in some respects, but I am also finding young people come in equally inflexible, right? That you come in and this is my job and this is exactly what I want to do and this is exactly what I want to get out of it. And so keeping that real open growth mindset, that whatever comes your way is an opportunity to grow, right? And that you're open to that. Marilyn mentioned the sense making, the being able to think of things in systems, and those kind of things are there. You can, I am a full believer, you can learn pretty much anything in most of the jobs where I'm hiring people. You're not going to be a neurosurgeon if you haven't studied for it, right? And so I don't want you doing surgery on my brain. However, in most roles and things that a lot of it is learned. It's more about how you learn and what you're willing, you know, how open you are to that and how curious you remain. Please always ask us questions. We don't know what bias we have or what learned helplessness we've created over these years until somebody goes, why did you do that? Or how come that person did that for you? And you're like, oh. Right. So keep curious, always have an open growth mindset. Don't be too stuck in what your expectations are, because if you do, then you will miss out on a lot of stuff. And keep asking us questions. Never stop.
Thank you so much, Rhea. Good luck on your exam this afternoon. Wishing you all the best in your accounting exam. We'll all cross our fingers for you and hope that it goes really well. Thank you for moderating and all your contributions. I can see through the chat, lots of kudos from the audience members.
Thank you, Rhea. Good luck.
Thank
We
you.
have a couple minutes. I'm just going to check the Q&A.
And thank you to
see if
all
any-
everyone in the chat. I was trying to say thank you, but I accidentally only sent it to the panelists, which is funny because we were talking about digital skills. But thank you to everyone, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the panel. And thank you for having me, Tina. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye, Rhea.
Bye-bye.
We just have a couple minutes. I see there's a couple questions in the Q&A. So I've got a question here. What are some tangible or practical tips you can give us to make hybrid work successful, including remote employees and overcoming the proximity bias? Kirsten, do you want to start?
Yeah. So as leaders, you have to just check yourself all the time. It is too easy, and it will be almost impossible not to slip back into proximity bias if you are in the office. If you're in the office and there's somebody right there, you're going to talk to them first. Setting up a meeting or sending a message or trying to, you know, team somebody or Skype with somebody, or well, Skype's dead, sorry. Oh, sorry, Microsoft, you did kill it if you're here. You know, these kind of things, like it's just a layer that just stops all the collision. So you have to be super conscious that don't let it happen, right? Don't let it happen that you meet somebody in the hall, you have a great conversation, and now a decision's been made, and you haven't talked to probably the two people that you really needed to talk to about it because it impacts them the most. So you got to really check yourself on proximity bias. It's just going to, it is what it is. It's true all the time. I tell horrible stories about how when we first had a team in England, we would change process and not tell them, and they'd come in the morning and they'd start to run the process and it would be different and not work. And we're all sleeping and they can't get their work done because we would have done that, right? Because out of sight, out of mind. And it is absolutely true, especially when you get excited about being with people. So I'll say that. I don't know, Marilyn, if you want to talk about including remote employees. I have more on that, but maybe I'll let you go there.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's you know, hybrid sounds really, you know, easy, and you know, you can come in whenever you want and flexible. But I do think you know, tangibly having those team agreements within, you know, your team. What day is it that you want to be all in? Again, I'm just kind of have my professional services lens on. If you take that people first approach, client first approach in our world, and define it for what makes sense to your team, and just again that proximity bias, I don't have a real great answer for that, but just to keep that, you know, in mind. I think we all just have to remember that. Because it's you're right. It's so easy to fall into that trap. I think I fell into that yesterday. So yeah, it's you know, we're all kind of doing a whole lot, and whoever's nearby, you got the opportunity, right? So
yeah, and I realized that wasn't very tangible. I think the way you check yourself is before you announce a decision or even before you make a decision, make sure you have asked yourself, have I spoken to the people this is going to most impact or would have the most salient feedback or information to help me make this decision? And if you haven't, you just talked to the person who was there. That's what I mean. So tangibly, always ask yourself that question before you roll something out prematurely, potentially.
Yeah, and I think flexible doesn't mean without structure, right? So the piece that
Right.
I would add from a tangible perspective is, even though we're flexible, it doesn't mean that everything is sort of we may need structure. We may need to have, you know, morning check-ins with some employees who aren't on site and those kind of things to help ensure that those collisions and those regular times to chat do happen. So we've just got a couple minutes, and the last question I wanted to ask is, when you look forward and you think, say, 10, 15 years down the track, what is a leadership skill, attribute, characteristic that you think will be sort of mainstream, normal, table stakes that maybe is just emerging now? So lots of demands on leaders, lots of changing context, lots of expectations around all the things we need to do to both sort of think about our works and futurize and ready for and prepare for the future, setting that vision, but also, Kirsten, as you said, really sort of like knowing your people and stewarding and steering your folks into positive experiences both at work and into their future careers. So thinking in the future, what will sort of leaders need to be demonstrating, a skill they need to have that maybe right now is emerging?
Well, I think in the DEIR space, I think just it won't be okay anymore to not, like, right now it's still emerging, figuring out how to build and have a high performing diverse team. So I would say that that's going to be table stakes for leaders, that now, everybody's like, I'm trying and I'm doing this and that, but it's going to be, if you're not doing that, you actually won't be leading anymore. I think it will become that. The other thing I think is people really get very specialized, and I think getting really comfortable with being less specialized. And being a more broad generalist type of leader that is not the smartest person in a subject, but the best person to build a vision and inspire people. So I think those are two skills that are still emerging. The idea that you're not the smartest person in the room and you're the manager of the team. Those are still emerging ideas. So I would say those two.
Thank you.
Marilyn? Yeah, no, to build off that, I think similarly, I think there's, a lot of talk about vulnerability these days, right? Just being, just kind of self-aware of, that you may not have all the answers, and just kind of being open with that. Sometimes, for instance, like coding is not, something that everybody knows how to do. And just, being able to say that out loud, even though you're maybe managing a whole team of coders, right? Just being vulnerable about that. And, we're learning from each other. And, this whole concept of that reverse mentoring, that's going to be, I think, more and more we're going to see that happen as the technology kind of steams up, and the digital advancement and transformation continues. So that collaboration and working with many different teams with diverse kind of thinking and concepts like that, pulling it together, whatever that skill is, like that collaboration skill, I think that's going to be a hot one going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think what I hear from you is really about, like, how do we humanize the organization, and how do we ensure that we can be ourselves, we can be vulnerable, we don't have to be the smartest person, we don't have to know it all, but we still have to make it all work, and make it a place where we can move forward and thrive. So
and that's our superpower as women. I think somebody just put that into the Brooke. It is our superpower. So I mean, we got this. We got the future is ours if we want to take it.
Yeah. One thing I often say whenever is, like, women have been asked to flex so often into sort of typical, traditional, sort of stereotypical traits of leadership, which maybe are more masculine. Take up more space, lower your voice, all these kind of tips to be a good leader. But I do think we're moving into an area where, like, my brother-in-law came to me and was like, how do I learn how to be more empathetic as a leader? So I think that relational superpower, those skills, sort of those characteristics are going to be really relevant and really important for leading teams and people and organizations. And flexibility. Thanks, Brooke. Marilyn, Kirsten, thank you so much for saying yes to this invitation to come and have this conversation. Thank you for being willing to have Rhea moderate and allow a youth voice and a youth leader to take the stage and not be the expert in the room, but also not be sidelined. So thank you for giving us that opportunity. It's been a delight. I've enjoyed the conversation, and we do have it recorded. We will send out the PwC Hopes and Fears survey that has some really interesting global workforce data, just to think about this new era, these trends that are coming in. Of course, they affect all people, but Minerva has a special interest in how we're supporting self-identified women and girls sort of achieve their dreams and their leadership goals. So thank you for contributing. A huge thank you to PwC and Vancity, who have been very historic, long-term supporters of Minerva's work, very values-aligned organizations, seeing lots of ways that we can work together and continue to support each other's missions. And just thank you again to PwC for making this webinar possible.